Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Get ready for Talking Heads, the show where expert insights meet world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Brought to you by USA Global TV and Radio. Meet our distinguished presenters. From the great state of Texas, longevity expert, award-winning author, publisher, and distinguished Toastmaster, red.olaughlin. From London, England, soul heart awakener, novelist, vocal coach, and artist, Dr. Madeline Chan. Also from England, the Harley Street stress expert, therapist, ambassador for peace, and speaker, Carolyn Heward. And from Australia, ICF PCC credentialed coach, entrepreneur, and leadership coach, Mariska Dupria. Experience their expertise, connect with their wisdom, and transform your perspective. Watch Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. This video and its contents are the property of USA Global TV and Radio. All rights reserved. Terms and conditions apply. Visit usaglobaltv.com for more details.
Howdy y'all, Red O'Laughlin here. We're on Talking Heads on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. And today I'm picking a topic that I could tie in to another phrase. One of the phrases I love is the only good day was yesterday, a Navy SEAL term. And in many cases for our health, that's very much the truth. The only good day we had was yesterday because each day seems to get a little worse. But sometimes we have things that gradually happen and all of a sudden our fatigue grows a little bit more. Our brain fog seems to just grow incrementally. We just don't have the enthusiasm we used to. There are just several things sometimes we notice that if we back off but 6 months ago I didn't feel this way. But there may be a cause for that. And one of those causes is called resistance. Now, one of the shows that I loved years ago and still do, Star Trek. One of the Star Treks featured a big cube, a huge one, called the Borg. And the Borg, one of their most iconic phrases is resistance is futile. And we'll talk about that very briefly. But let me go ahead and load up the slides and get ready to go today. So resistance is not futile is my speech for today, because when we look at the resistance in our body that happens, it's not necessarily permanent. We can do something about it. The USA Global TV and Radio Network is live streamed on Amazon Fire, Zizzle TV, E360 TV, YouTube, a couple different channels there, Android TV, Apple TV, several social media sites, and more. We have audio podcast after the fact. I have a couple live streams to my Facebook channels, but all of my presentations on health and wellness are for education and awareness. My books and a lot of my information can be found on my website, red.olaughlin.com. That's red like the color, R-E-D, O'Laughlin, O-L-A-U-G-H-L-I-N. So it's red.olaughlin.com. Some of the books that I've written are there. And the one we're going to talk about today is Failure is Not an Option, in conjunction with the speech I'm giving. The live streams and the archives are found on the USA Global TV YouTube channel. They're also found on archive shows on my website, red.olaughlin.com. I'm a researcher. I've never been in the medical field, never been in the pharmaceutical field. My first love in life, sophomore in high school, was chemistry. I got a degree in it, got an invitation to Vietnam, never got a chance to practice it. Got a total of 5 academic degrees, all in different subjects, 7 professional certifications. I retired as a Navy captain with 31 years. I've been to 61 countries in the world. But one of the last companies I worked for, my specialty was cause and effect, taproot investigations for failures. And I would go into 6, 7, 8 layers deep into a problem. Why did this happen? What caused it? And so you find out what the root cause is and be able to treat it. So when my wife came down with breast cancer 10 years ago, a little more than that, I started thinking to myself, well, maybe I take my chemical background and look and see, is there something I can find? And I was surprised at the number of things that I could address with regard to the side effects of some of the medicines that she was getting that made her life a lot better. And so one by one, we tackled each one and eventually came over most of them caused by chemotherapy and radiation therapy. We've been married 56 years. July will be 57. We have 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and our first great grandson, just a little over a year old. Best-selling author. I've written 8 books. I'm writing 2 more right now. Independent publisher. I've done over 40 books for other people. Distinguished Toastmaster. As a writer, I have over 1,000 original content articles on LinkedIn. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, my presentations are educational, information, awareness. In 2024, my show, The Wise Ones, I was very fortunate and very thankful to be the number 2 and number 6 host for that particular broadcast. So getting into our topic today, resistance is not futile. And I wrote a book based on the Mercury space program called Failure is Not an Option, because at that point in time in the Mercury program, failure was not an option. You're putting a man on the moon and bringing him back alive safely. And so I have a lot of information in there and some more current stuff that most motivational kinds of books don't even include. So I go out and I look for things that work. So resistance is not futile. It's an iconic phrase. If you talk about anybody mention the Borg, that's probably one of the first phrases that will come up. The Borg cube, the technology they had, the ability was basically anybody that they encountered that was a threat, they assimilated. And whatever weapon systems they had, whatever technology they had, was assimilated. They became part of the Borg. And so when they said resistance is futile, they're saying, hey, no matter what you do, you can kill this particular Borg member. They're going to learn from whatever weapon that was, counter it, and 2 or 3 other assassinations of the attackers, they're going to basically overtake you. Yeah, there were occasions where the good guys would win, but not that often. But basically, it signaled a danger. And we have the same thing in our body. We have resistance to certain things, usually hormonal things. And as such, it's a danger signal. And so this response in our body can be linked to a number of different things. Typically, we hear about insulin resistance, a very real thing. We have resistance to disease. We'll talk very briefly about that, to drugs. Leptin is one that most people never heard of, same with ghrelin. Dopamine, most people don't even know what dopamine is, much less we can have a resistance to it. And a bit more. So toward the end of the show, I'm going to go zip, zip, zip and cover several. But let's go ahead and get into the first ones that I really need to talk about. We're talking about hormones. We get, I think last count I saw somewhere near 50 different hormones in the body. I don't even think they really know for sure. But when you have a resistance, we're going to be talking about insulin here in the next slide or two. It's a decreased or an absent response. Typically, the hormone has a planned response. And if it's a decreased response and the body needs to make more of that hormone, like in this particular case, let's just say insulin, well, the body responds by making more. But it can be some cases where it's just no response at all. And that's even kind of a worse situation. But the human tissues are programmed to receive that hormone or what the hormone is transporting. And when they don't operate properly, the body's reaction is, let me just make a little bit more of this hormone. We'll push it in, cram it in there. I'm not going to worry about it. So the body makes extra hormone, and it's not necessary. We're balanced creatures, and we need it. So, and sometimes you have one hormone that's out of balance. It's going to affect the other ones. And when you start looking at the causes, like we've done on last 150 shows here on Talking Heads, lifestyle issues matter because those are the things that keep us in balance. And so when I start looking for what caused some of these problems and what are some of the solutions, it may be an abuse of some lifestyle issue. And the correction may be, well, let's just get this back under control. So that being said, I don't need to say that being said, probably the most well-known resistance in our body is insulin resistance. Insulin is made in the pancreas. It regulates blood sugar levels, which is basically an energy source. And when we eat something that has glucose in it, it gets into our bloodstream, and insulin is injected to be the guide. It's going to take that molecule of glucose and take it to a muscle, take it to a fat cell, take it to a liver, and say, hey, here it is. And when that doesn't happen, when we have not enough insulin to get it into that tissue, the pancreas says, okay, well, let me make some more. And it makes some more. And what happens is now I end up with situations where I'm making a lot of insulin, but it's still not getting everything into the bloodstream. So I have extra blood sugar roaming around, and we test for it. And that's what is kind of the beginning of diabetes. So if I look at what are some of the resistance symptoms when I have insulin resistance, unexplained weight gain. And it doesn't happen overnight. This is something that happens over time. A lot of fatigue, increased thirst, big issue right there. That's a major plus. Frequent urination. Well, obviously, if you're drinking more, you're probably going to go to the bathroom more. Hunger. Some cases, blurred vision. Some of the causes can be genetic. There are a few of them in there. But the mere fact that we have a lot of excess body fat, that body fat almost becomes another organ unto itself. It almost has it's a new life form growing on your body. And so that excess body fat creates a lot of problems, and one of them can be insulin resistance. Physical inactivity is a potential. You're not burning that glycogen from the muscles that you need to in order to say, okay, I ate this much, I burned this much, I'm at zero. Well, sometimes we're not at zero. We can just keep eating and eating and eating. So our food choices can be a problem. Certain medications can cause it. But when I look at what are some of the risk factors that somebody could get insulin resistance, if you're heavily overweight, obese, yeah, your chances go up significantly. If you're over 45 years of age, yes. If you have a parent or a sibling with diabetes, yes. If your lifestyle is what would be considered sedentary, absolutely. If you have high blood pressure, again, increased risk. Heart disease, if you had a stroke, you have sleep apnea, if you're a smoker, if you're Black, Hispanic, Asian, or Middle Eastern, all of those are risk factors that say my potential risk for insulin is a little higher than most people because of those issues. So what concerns do I have? Well, probably the big one, the number one is diabetes, type 2 diabetes. But there's a lot of issues when you start looking at our metabolism. Metabolic syndrome, that's a high blood pressure, the extra weight around the middle, a lot of issues in there, cardiovascular disease. Those are the primary beginning stages. Once you start getting to be obese and have some other issues, a lot of other things take in. But from insulin sensitivity and having diabetes, there are many people that are underweight with diabetes. So it's just not a matter of, oh, I'm carrying an extra 30, 40 pounds. No, it's one of those issues that can affect anyone. Treatment, take a look at your diet. How much of your food is high glycemic index foods? Start looking at the low glycemic index. Start looking at weight management. Sometimes being able to take that extra weight off, get that extra fat out of your system. Exercise, stress management, big one, stress management. Stress loves to store fat, cortisol. Quality sleep, fasting, big issue there with regard to being able to maybe try to overcome this one. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just extremely difficult. Alcohol reduction, very, very wise thing to do. But you got to take a look at what is the cause of the problem, how severe is it, how is it being managed, what is your response, and how much time is there. So you really need to talk to a professional to find out what needs to happen and how you can go about monitoring it, measuring it, and overcoming it. What about a resistance to disease and drugs? Well, this is something we don't usually think about, but we say, what am I resistant to? Well, sometimes we're resistant to a disease. Well, we just went through COVID. A lot of people didn't get it. Some people got it and had very minor situations, but our immune system allows us to be resistant to disease. And how well our immune system works is based on our genetics, our lifestyle, a lot of environmental and behavioral factors. And so our immune system can be addressed. In fact, it can be rebuilt in 72 hours with fasting. But there's a lot of things there that we can do to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our immune system. And that keeps us healthier, because if we can fight that first line of defense against disease coming into the body, then we're way ahead of schedule. Sometimes you're taking a medicine and all of a sudden, let's say it's a blood pressure medicine, and everything's hunky-dory, you're under control. And then all of a sudden it starts going up and up and up. Well, sometimes a drug is no longer effective. You're developing a resistance to that drug, and they need to change the dosage. They need to change the drug. And so there's a lot of issues there. So you have resistance to infections, antibiotics, antiviral, antiparasitic, antifungal. A lot of things happen over time depending on what kind of drugs we're taking. A lot of people end up with a lot of antibiotics early on, and the antibiotics just not as effective in treating certain kinds of infections. So we have a runny nose and we want to have an antibiotic, and it turns out it's viral. Well, antibiotic isn't going to do any good, but we think it's going to help us. So again, you really need to see a professional in order to figure out what's going on. Leptin, one of my favorite, because it's one of those hormones that almost nobody knows about. When you have body fat, the hormone is one that's created in the fat cells itself. It regulates our hunger and satiety. It's also involved with energy balance. It doesn't affect us meal to meal, but it's a longer term, until months or longer. But when you eat and you have hunger, that hunger comes because the body's not seeing anything. You have ghrelin, we'll talk about that in a second, from the stomach, but the cycle of eating, digestion, emptying the stomach has a certain rhythm to it. And when you start getting extra fat, well, that's not part of a normal body. You're getting extra leptin being created, and that leptin, again, now creates that same problem you had with an extra antibiotic, because the body's seeing too much of it. So it's got a huge impact on weight loss, or not being able to get rid of body fat. So when your leptin levels are low, the body thinks it's starving, and so it causes you to overeat. So even though you're not hungry, your body thinks it's hungry, and you start overeating. It's kind of a vicious cycle, because it keeps itself going, and it affects your immune system, your metabolism, your endocrine system, and a lot of the symptoms are things you would expect: overweight, overeating, hunger. Very difficult to lose weight when you have a leptin resistance. Some metabolic disorders, hypertension, etc. Fatigue, mood changes, unable to sleep with the same regularity and consistency you used to have. Sometimes you get brain fog, joint pain. Stress is more difficult to handle. So leptin resistance is a real thing and can be handled. Some of the risk factors are if you're obese or heavily overweight. Because of the connection between the leptin and the brain, you start looking at some inflammation in the brain can create some problems. Great risk factor. Sometimes our issues are genetic, that are there, sleep. A lot of issues associated risk factor wise with leptin resistance. Treatment's relatively simple, but sometimes more difficult than we believe. Balanced diet. You need to get those lifestyle changes consistent and in the right order. So you get a balanced diet, you get a level of exercise. High intensity interval training, HIIT, is one that burns fat quickly. And so you start looking, well, if I'm burning the fat, well, I'm starting to get rid of some of that fat, then my leptin resistance issue should go away. Stress management, fasting, quality sleep. But whatever you're doing when you're dealing with leptin resistance, just like with insulin resistance, you really should see a professional, but it's a long-term commitment. It's not something you're going to get rid of in 2 weeks. Ghrelin, another term that we probably have never heard of. Ghrelin is created in our stomachs. It's a hunger stimulating hormone, and it deals with our hunger, our energy regulation. And sometimes it's diet induced, in fact, most of the time, probably because of the food you eat, but because it talks from the stomach to the brain, and you get this resistance, sometimes that brain disconnects a little bit. And so it's considered a temporary adaptation to obesity. And I want to tell you there, it's not necessarily as temporary as you think. It's not on again, off again, just like leptin and insulin. It takes a while to get your body, it took a while to get it to that level. It takes a while to get it back. It's not like you gain 30 pounds, now you need to lose 30 pounds. Losing those 30 pounds becomes pretty difficult. Controlling a lot of these different kinds of hormonal resistance is difficult. But again, we're back to lifestyle choices. And when you start eating properly, exercising properly, stress management, quality sleep, those are the things that when you are balanced in your lifestyle choices, the rest of these things start coming into normal range. Some of the symptoms of ghrelin resistance: you're just hungry all day long. You have extreme difficulty losing weight, snacking all the time, mood changes, metabolic issues, gastrointestinal issues, sometimes cognitive impairment. A lot of things associated because now these hormones are dealing not only with part of our body, our gut, but they're also talking to the brain. Some of the risk factors associated with ghrelin resistance, and as you might have guessed, overeating. But chronic stress, because you're not able to handle that stress, the stress starts adding extra fat cells. Those fat cells generally accumulate right around the gut. That's a big place for stress to store excess fat. So you get gut issues, a lot more things in there in the risk factor. Some of the primary concerns: metabolic problems, high blood pressure, and more. Anxiety, mood disorders, weight gain, obesity. So we're looking at most of these hormones dealing with our diet and our ability to put on fat or keep on fat or lose weight. And again, our habits that we have with our lifestyle choices come back and bite us in the butt when we're not doing it right. What kind of treatments are there? Well, lifestyle choices, weight management, being able to get down to a healthy weight. I'm not saying you can't have ghrelin resistance and be underweight. Some people do, but the majority of people are overweight. Stress management, fairly simple thing to do, but something most of us don't do. Getting quality sleep is more difficult than it sounds. YouTube has a lot of good programs on that to improve. Exercise, a lot of different kinds, but you need to get the body in motion. Get yourself on an eating schedule. If you're eating 1, 2, 3 meals a day, get on a schedule. Stop the snacking. Look at eating what's considered balanced nutrition, whatever that level of carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats. Keep it consistent. Then you can always come back later and tweak a little bit less of this, a little bit more of that. Hydration is a big, big, big deal with regard to ghrelin resistance. Fasting is another way of being able to kind of get yourself out of that mode. Okay, hopefully I took care of that problem. Dopamine resistance. Now we're talking about the brain. Let me go back one slide here, if I may, and just because I know I just had a. Okay, so I think I was talking about getting on an eating schedule, balanced nutrition, make sure you're hydrated, and fasting. And the fasting can easily be intermittent fasting, 16, 18, 20 hours a day. It can be one meal a day. But fasting is a really good way to start treating some of these issues with regard to hormonal resistance. Let's do something that's another hormone, but not necessarily dealing with our weight. Now we're dealing with our brain, dopamine resistance. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It transmits our pleasure center. And when we don't have that one working properly, we end up with a diminished capacity. It affects our behavior. So that behavior gets reinforced, but it's not necessarily a good behavior. We need good behavior for our pleasure and reward, for our motivation, for our movement, for the things that we want to do in life. But if I reinforce a bad behavior, that's not what I need. And sometimes it can be addictive in the fact that I'm reinforcing a bad behavior. Now, that addiction I'm talking about in this particular line of my slide is not the same thing as an addiction that can be a cause of the problem. So if I end up with a substance abuse issue, chronic stress that I'm not dealing with, if I have Parkinson's, if I have some other kind of psychiatric disorders, pituitary tumors, all of these affect our brain in different ways and can affect those receptors in the brain that receive pleasure and determine our capacity to deal with motivation and reward. Some of the symptoms of dopamine resistance is lack of motivation, lack of ability to concentrate, memory issues. Sometimes you end up with little tremors, kind of like Parkinson's. Motor control, we talked about movement, just our ability, because you're talking about neurons, things are not necessarily working the way they should. Some stiffness, muscle control. And again, you're talking about the brain, so now we're into those areas of depression, anxiety, ADHD, potentially into the area of drug abuse. So a lot of issues there that can deal because your brain is not operating the same. And sometimes you end up with a little bit of anxiety, depression is caused by something, but long term, it can possibly be a potential sign that there's something else going on. Some of the risk factors, obviously, as with most of these things, genes are a problem. Poor diet, a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, because that inflammation gets into the brain area, something you do not need. Type 3 diabetes is what it's called in some circles. Chronic stress, not being able to address stress satisfactorily. Inactivity, lack of exercise, poor quality sleep. These are all high risk factors. And we see cognitive issues because, again, it's a brain problem. So primary health concerns, balance, physical balance, mood, depression, tremors, muscle cramps, memory loss. A lot of issues because our brain is not functioning the way it's meant to function. Okay, let's kind of go through several here. And it's interesting because there's so many different kinds of hormonal imbalance that result over time in some type of resistance. If I have a thyroid hormone resistance, it impairs the thyroid function, which impairs our metabolism. And when you start addressing metabolism, now we start having an energy regulation issue. If most of my metabolism is based on a glucose energy source, and I am now having glucose issues because of insulin resistance, then I'm going to have energy regulation issues within the body. Well, a thyroid is another major cause of some of these issues. Cortisol, I've mentioned that a couple times here, because when you start not treating stress properly, cortisol is one of 3 or 4 different hormonal reactions to stress. We end up with too much cortisol over time. Our bellies gain extra inches, and we can develop what's called a cortisol resistance. And it's a response to stress. It's a very high indicator of inflammation because of our inability to address the stress issue. Because of the kinds of things we're seeing, anytime you end up with increased levels of inflammation, now you're opening the door to almost every other disease that's out there, because most disease starts at chronic low-level inflammation at the cellular level in the body. What's going to happen, we don't know, but left over time, unchallenged, unquenched, that inflammation turns into oxidative stress, which then turns into some other issue. Human growth hormone resistance. Don't usually think about that. You know, when we're toddlers, we're making it hand over fist. We grow, we get tall, and we get big. And then somewhere in our 20s, we start losing a little bit of its production. You get into 40s, down a lot more. Start seeing our bellies grow a little bit. We start seeing a resistance to things. You get in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and you're making almost none at all. But the ideal thing is that just fasting, high intensity exercise, which you usually don't do when you're in your 70s, are things that cause your body to create human growth hormone back to the levels you had as a teenager. But when I'm looking at HGH resistance, I'm looking at growth problems. So, if you have a child and that problem is not in the growth cycle that they need to be, talk to your doctor about maybe you need to be tested for human growth hormone. Maybe it's one of those things that's not operating properly. You can end up, because of the nature of human growth hormone, it could be a metabolic issue in the body, a composition issue. Things are just not growing in the right response to that particular hormone. Sex hormone resistance, testosterone, estrogen, lots of issues in there, all dealing with reproductive health. And again, if you're trying to get pregnant, it may be a sex hormone resistance issue. And I'm going to talk, probably think on the last slide, about how you can go and do some of your own research on this. But there's certain things that should happen, and it's interesting when you try to get things and they don't happen. All of a sudden, okay, it's not going to work. You give up, and then all of a sudden you get pregnant. I've heard that story from so many people that it's just, our bodies work in strange ways. But there's some things we can test for, and there's some things we can do. I mentioned the thyroid. Well, there's a parathyroid hormone resistance, and this deals more with our bone health, our ability, just like with vitamin D, our ability to absorb calcium. You take calcium in through your diet, assuming you have enough magnesium. It gets into your stomach. The stomach makes it bioavailable with the magnesium, so it leaves through the duodenum. As it's leaving the stomach, if you have enough vitamin D3, it gets picked up into the bloodstream. Now you have the calcium ready to go into your bones. But if you don't have enough vitamin K2, it goes to your heart valves and arteries, not where you want calcium. That's when you get extra plaque. But if I have a parathyroid hormone resistance, or I have vitamin D resistance issues, that calcium absorbability is not going to be the same. So it's going to affect my bone health and other issues. And just because you have the calcium in your bones doesn't necessarily mean it's there. It's going to stay there. It comes out just as fast as it can go in, depending on a lot of issues. And most of the time, it's pH of the body. Your blood wants a pH of about 7.4 plus or minus just a little twidging. And so if you start getting below that, the blood system in your body is going to extract calcium from the bones to give you the proper pH, which means now you're going to be osteopenia, your bone porosity is going to change, a lot of issues. So getting the calcium to the right place is difficult. Keeping it there is almost as difficult. Aldosterone resistance, again, you're now talking about another hormone that deals with electrolyte balances in the body. And this is super critical, particularly when you start looking at how your heart works. You need the right kinds of electrolytes in the right quantities. You start getting that out of phase any bit whatsoever, a lot of cardiovascular issues can happen. So, but again, because you're talking about the heart, you're talking about blood pressure, you're talking about metabolic issues. So that's another one that could be talked about to your doctor. Glucagon resistance. This again deals with your insulin, your blood sugar, your glucose production. Lots and lots and lots of things there. So just because you have maybe insulin resistance doesn't mean you can't have 2 or 3 or 4 other ones that may be present or may be on the cusp of being present. So you need to balance everything, and one of the best things is your lifestyle choices. Melatonin. It's another resistance. We get melatonin. Usually it's made in the pituitary, but we only make about 5% there. And we get it, and it creates our sleep cycle at night, our circadian rhythm. But our real cause of melatonin is from infrared rays or red light. It penetrates the body, penetrates the skull, gets into the spinal fluid, gets down into the cells of the body, coordinates with the mitochondria, and you start creating melatonin. And that's where 95% of the body's melatonin is made. And when you start having a melatonin resistance, you're going to see issues with sleeping, issues with your circadian rhythms. So if you start seeing that a problem, that might be a clue. Maybe you need to talk to somebody about being tested for that, or seeing what else is going on in your life. Maybe there's some stress that you're not addressing. Lots and lots and lots of things. So, but again, I was giving this on the primary hormones that I think are of interest. But I can ask the Google to give me a list of hormones in the human body, and it'll do a very good job of it. And if you take one, and I did this as part of my research, okay, just take that one and type in that and resistance, and boom, okay, I didn't know that was even a problem. Okay, then I type in that resistance, what causes it? What are the risk factors? What are my health concerns? How do I treat it? And each one of those can be looked at individually. And for us, that's something that we don't take the time to do. But my programs are here for awareness and understanding. I want to be able to give you some options to say, hey, this might be an issue with my dopamine because of my, my mood, my anxiety that I didn't have 6 months ago. But it gives you some options to think about. But more importantly, it gives you an option to go in and talk to your doctor about, because you can do your own research, come in and print out a couple things and say, Doc, I need to talk to you about this. Maybe we need to test for this. And so you go in there, you talk to your doctor, you have a decent conversation. He says, okay, let's get you in, get a couple of tests and see if this is the problem. If they know you have a particular kind of problem, now the door opens up because they have a legal and a moral responsibility to treat that problem. But if they don't know about it, they do nothing. And so I'm not advocating that they treat everything with regard to giving you a prescription drug. I would prefer the natural options outside of those particular choices. But sometimes you need a drug because we just can't we can't fix something as easily. But if you want to look at just a better health down the road, and I want to leave you with the thought that resistance to improved health down the road is not futile. It's something you can do. But you need to control the choices you make every day. And these are the habits that you have with regard to managing your stress, managing your weight, your dietary choices. Lots and lots of things fit under that overall term, lifestyle choices. So with that, I'm going to end my show a couple of minutes early today. And I look forward to you all next week. Actually, next week I'm not going to be here. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is taking my slot on one or two of my shows, but there will be no talking heads next week. And I will see you again in 2 weeks. So with that, take care of you all and have a wonderful time. Bye now.
In a world craving connection, one platform dared to dream bigger. USA Global TV and Radio, a beacon for global voices, authentic storytelling, and elevated listening. Led by visionary Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the journey from a spark to a global force is now captured in one inspiring book. Honored with YouTube's Silver Creator Award for surpassing 100,000 subscribers. Discover the evolution, the challenges, the triumphs, and the unstoppable spirit that created a global movement. Executive producer Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang. Creative director Paul Garcia. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Now an Amazon #1 new release in paperback and ebook. Broadcasting Brilliance, the evolution of USA Global TV and Radio, is inspiring readers around the world. Join the movement that's redefining global media one story at a time.
Meet Red O'Laughlin, TV show host, presenter, and author.
Howdy y'all, Red O'Laughlin here. I'm a TV host on the USA Global TV and Radio Network.
Red has 3 weekly shows every Thursday.
I've been a TV host now with USA Global probably maybe just a little over 3 years. Probably, I know for sure, 250, 300 shows.
Join Red on the Corner Bookstore.
The Corner Bookstore is one where we talk to authors, publicists, publishers, editors, cover designers, anybody associated with the writing and authoring book production business. You have somebody in that area, I can help you with regard to getting your book done, getting it published, working with you on a cover. A lot of things I can help people with, and I have probably maybe published over 40 books for people so far.
Join Red on The Wise Ones.
On the Wise Ones, I'm looking for entrepreneurs, business owners, people who have wisdom, lessons learned over time that they can share with others. So please go to usaglobaltv.com, sign up, and join me there.
Book your session on usaglobaltv.com. Join Red on Talking Heads.
On Talking Heads, I take my experience. I fell in love with chemistry many years ago, got a degree in it, got an invitation to Vietnam, never practiced chemistry per se. But I did get a chance when my wife was going through chemo to get back into the chemical end of things. I started looking for cause and effect relationships. I had been working at a company doing cause and effect analysis on failures in the field on various products that we made. So I said, why not look at the cellular structure in the body? The chemicals are chemicals. They do certain things. So I take my knowledge of chemistry and research. I write about it. I speak about it. I have over 1,000 original content articles on LinkedIn, most of them dealing with some aspect of health or wellness. I speak on that topic quite often, and the Talking Head Show is one that I concentrate my knowledge of health and wellness on in order to help people.
Red is a distinguished Toastmaster.
As a distinguished Toastmaster, I help people get their speeches developed. The presentation is something that I critique all the time with Toastmasters. It's one of those skills that I have. I can easily help you on that one. So from the position of writing, publishing, book coach, speaking, and being a keynote speaker at an event or virtually, depending on how things work out. But those are the things that I can help people with, and I have 3 shows every week here on the USA Global TV and Network, and please join me when you can. Appreciate it. Bye now.
Here are some of the books that Red has written and published. Contact Red.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacqueline.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations. Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honored to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.